We're all about giving you the knowledge to just totally impress everyone you know. And I'm Ian.
And I'm Maria.
And today we're going to be looking at all these great articles and research that you sent in.
That's right. About a topic that I know a lot of our listeners are really interested in, thinking in English.
Yeah, and I'm excited to dive in. Looks like we've got some great material here, really useful stuff to help you kind of unlock that next level of fluency.
Definitely. I mean, this is something that I know a lot of learners struggle with.
Yeah.
It can be a real sticking point, getting stuck in that translation loop.
It's like, you're trying to write an email.
Right.
And you're constantly having to look up every single word of the dictionary.
It really slows you down.
It does. It's super clunky. And from what we're seeing in these sources, it seems like it's not really about just memorizing tons and tons of vocabulary and grammar rules. It's more about training your brain, process information directly in English.
It's about rewiring your thought patterns.
Yeah.
Which can be a game changer.
It really can be a game changer. Now, looking at everything that you sent in, one theme that seems to come up a lot is to start small.
Yeah.
It can be really overwhelming to think, I'm going to change the entire way I think.
Right. You don't want to completely overhaul your thought processes overnight.
So what are some practical, first steps?
Well, instead of jumping right into complex grammar or trying to, formulate these really intricate sentences in your head.
Right.
Just focus on basic vocabulary. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
How do children learn their native language?
Right.
They start by associating words with objects and actions in their environment.
That's a great point.
Right.
So for a listener, maybe this could look like just walking around their house and, okay, that's a chair. That's a table.
Yes.
That's a coffee cup.
Like I said.
All in English. No translation.
That's the goal. Just create a direct link between the object and its English name. Bypass the need for that mental translation. And as you practice this, consistently, what you'll find is that those English words start popping into your head more naturally.
So it's like you're building a mental muscle almost.
Exactly.
The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Yeah. And what's really interesting is that this simple act of labeling objects, it can actually have a ripple effect on your overall fluency.
Yeah.
Because you're building up your vocabulary, you'll naturally start to form, simple sentences in your mind.
So instead of just thinking apple,
right,
you start to think, I want to eat that red apple.
Exactly. And without even realizing it, you're starting to internalize, basic sentence structure,
right,
and grammar. It's a much more, organic and intuitive way of learning compared to just memorizing rules from a textbook.
Right. It's about really making it intuitive. And one of the sources that you sent in talked about this really cool trick. I love this.
Oh, yeah.
Using visual reminders.
The label everything strategy.
Yes.
Yeah. It might sound a little silly.
It does sound a little silly.
But there's actually a lot of science backing it up. Think about it. We're visual creatures.
Yeah.
Our brains are wired to remember images much more easily than abstract concepts.
So you walk into your kitchen.
Yeah.
You see a sticky note on the refrigerator that says refrigerator. Every time you see that,
exactly,
it reinforces that connection.
You're creating this mini immersion environment in your own home.
And you can even take it a step further. One of the other things was using flashcards.
Yes.
But with pictures instead of translations.
Absolutely.
So you're creating that direct neural pathway.
Yeah.
Between the image and the English word.
That's exactly it.
You're cutting out the middleman of translation.
And the more you practice this, the stronger those pathways become. And the faster you'll be able to think and respond in English.
It's like learning to play a musical instrument.
It is.
It's all about repetition.
Yeah.
Now, I know some people listening might be thinking, okay, this all sounds great, but I barely have time to
I know.
brush my teeth in the morning, let alone label everything in my house.
Great. Who has time for all that?
And that's where I think the beauty of, these micro-learning techniques comes in.
Yes. Even dedicating just 5 or 10 minutes each day.
It can make a really big difference.
It can.
It's about, just making it a habit.
Yeah.
Something you weave into your routine, even if it's just for a few minutes while you're waiting in line at the grocery store or
absolutely
commuting to work, something like that.
Consistency trumps intensity.
Yes.
When it comes to building new neural connections.
Now, okay, so we've covered starting small with vocabulary, using these visual reminders and being consistent. But how do we move beyond just single words?
Yeah.
How do we start forming more complex thoughts, sentences in English?
Yeah. Right. Well, as you become more comfortable with individual words, you can gradually start incorporating them into simple sentences.
Okay.
It's like building with Legos. You start with individual bricks, and then you use them to create increasingly elaborate structures.
So instead of just thinking hungry,
Right.
you think, I'm feeling hungry, and I think I'll make a sandwich.
Exactly. And what's cool is that this simple act of constructing sentences in your mind, it can actually help you internalize grammar rules in a much more organic way.
It's learning by doing.
Exactly.
Way more effective than just memorizing rules from a textbook. And this brings us to something that I think is really crucial
Yeah.
to really unlocking fluency. The internal monologue,
Yes.
that silent conversation that you have with yourself.
Having that conversation with yourself.
It might sound strange, but it's incredibly powerful.
It is.
It's about making that mental shift from thinking about English to actually thinking in English. But how do you practice that
Right.
in a way that feels natural and engaging?
Well, one suggestion is to start narrating your daily activities in English. Like, as you're getting ready in the morning, think to yourself, okay,
Okay.
I'm brushing my teeth, I'm getting dressed, I'm making breakfast, all in English.
You're giving like a running commentary on your life,
Exactly.
but in English.
But in English. And, you can take it a step further
Okay.
by having imaginary conversations with yourself in English.
Ooh, I like that.
Right.
So you're at a coffee shop.
Yeah.
You practice ordering your coffee in English.
Exactly.
Hi, I'd like a latte with almond milk, please.
Or, you could practice asking for directions. Excuse me, could you tell me how to get to the nearest bookstore?
And you can do that anywhere,
You can.
anytime.
And nobody even knows you're doing it?
It's like your secret weapon.
It is. It's like a secret weapon in your fluency arsenal.
And as you do this more and more, you'll find that not only are you improving your speaking skills, you're actually enhancing your ability to think critically and creatively in English.
Yeah. It's like
Ah,
you're
I get it.
giving your brain a safe space to practice,
Yeah.
to work out those English muscles.
Yeah. But I think one of the hardest things is getting away from that translation habit.
Oh, absolutely.
It's so easy to see a word and be like, okay, what is that in my language?
It's a natural instinct.
And then think, okay, now, how do I say that in English?
Especially when you're first starting out. But it can really hold you back.
It really can.
Yeah.
Because you're not really engaging with the language. You're not actually thinking in English.
Right. You're stuck in this loop
You're just going back and forth.
between English and your native language.
Yeah, it's like trying to drive a car with one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake.
Exactly.
You're not going to get anywhere.
We're not going to get very far.
So how do you escape that?
Right.
And one of the things that came up in the research a lot was visualization.
Visualization.
And I'm kind of imagining this as like, you create mental pictures
Yeah.
that are linked to English words.
Exactly.
So instead of, translating the word happy,
Right.
I picture things that make me feel happy.
Exactly. So you're creating a direct association between the English word and its meaning without that middle step of translation.
And I think this would be really helpful for, those abstract concepts or feelings that maybe don't have a direct equivalent in your native language.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And, we were talking about flashcards before.
Yeah.
One of the things was instead of having, the word and then the translation,
Yes.
have a picture.
Have a picture.
And that forces you to make that connection.
Right. You're training your brain to see the world through an English lens.
Exactly.
So instead of mentally translating everything you encounter, you start to perceive things directly in English.
Yeah.
And this applies not just to objects, but also to actions, emotions, even abstract concepts,
Wow.
The key is to use your imagination and create those vivid mental images that are directly tied to the English language.
It's making me realize how often I translate without even realizing
Oh,
it.
I know. It's so easy to do.
That's a really interesting technique.
Yeah.
What about when it comes to like reading and writing?
Right.
How can you apply this thinking in English to those areas?
Well, when it comes to reading, the key is to focus on understanding the overall meaning of the text
Okay.
rather than getting bogged down in individual words you might not know.
Yeah, because I often find myself like, grabbing my phone,
Right.
looking up every other word.
Yeah, it's a common trap, but it can really interrupt your flow.
It does.
So instead try to infer the meaning of those unfamiliar words from the context.
Okay.
And don't be afraid to guess.
Yeah.
You'll be surprised how often you're right.
So it's more about getting the main idea
Exactly.
than understanding every single word.
And as you read more and more in English, you'll naturally start to pick up new vocabulary, you know, and internalize those grammar structures. It's like immersing yourself in this sea of English.
And the more you're exposed to it, the more it kind of like seeps in.
Exactly.
Now, what about writing? A lot of the stuff that you sent in was about journaling in English.
Yeah, journaling can be a great way to practice thinking in English, you know,
Yeah.
because it's a low pressure environment.
Okay.
You know, you have the freedom to express yourself without the fear of making mistakes.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people might be intimidated by that.
I can understand that. But remember, your journal is a safe space, you know?
Yeah.
It's for you to experiment.
So it's more about the process than the product.
Exactly. The goal is to get those thoughts flowing in English.
Okay.
Even if they're not perfectly grammatically correct, even if you have to look up a few words.
So what are some like practical tips
Yeah.
to get started with that? Like, what do I write about?
We'll start with simple things. Describe your day, your thoughts, your feelings. It doesn't have to be profound or literary, you know? Just get in the habit of expressing yourself in English.
So it could be something like, today I went to the park
Yeah.
and I saw a beautiful sunset
Exactly.
and it made me feel happy.
Perfect.
And then as you get more comfortable, you know, you can start to add more detail.
Exactly. And you can experiment with different writing styles, explore different topics, you know, even challenge yourself to use new vocabulary.
So it can be a really creative outlet,
It can.
as well as, you know, a way to learn English. But let's be real, we're all busy.
Yeah.
So how much time should someone really be spending on this every day?
Even 5 to 10 minutes a day can make a difference.
Okay.
It's all about consistency.
It's just like any habit.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
a mental workout for your English muscles. And just like with physical exercise, you know, consistency is more important than intensity.
This is great stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like already feeling inspired to dig out my old journal.
I know, me too.
But before we move on, I'm curious about, you know, creating more of an immersive English experience.
Yes.
Because I think we all know how important that is
Absolutely.
when you're learning a language.
Immersion is key.
So what are some of the things that came up in the research?
Well, one of the most popular methods, of course, is watching movies and TV shows in English.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic for a reason.
It's a fun and easy way to expose yourself to natural language.
Yeah.
Different accents, colloquial expressions.
What if your listening comprehension isn't quite there yet?
Right?
Like watching a movie without subtitles feels really overwhelming.
Sure. Well, start with subtitles in English if you need them.
Okay.
You know, it can help you connect the spoken words with their written form.
Uh-huh.
But the goal is to gradually wean yourself off of those subtitles
Okay.
as your listening skills improve.
So maybe start with subtitles and then halfway through the movie, turn them off.
Exactly.
Challenge yourself a little bit.
And don't be afraid to rewind and rewatch scenes, you know,
Okay.
if you need to. The key is to really engage with the language and train your ears to tune in to the nuances of English pronunciation.
So it's like going to the gym for your listening skills.
Exactly.
Now, movies and TV shows are great, but what about other kinds of audio?
Yeah, podcasts and audiobooks are fantastic resources as well.
Okay.
I mean, the beauty of podcasts is that you can find them on pretty much any topic imaginable.
You can.
So you can always find something that interests you.
Yeah.
And with audiobooks, you can get lost in a story
Right.
while immersing yourself in the language.
And again, it doesn't have to be hours and hours.
No, not at all. Even short bursts of 10 or 15 minutes can be beneficial.
It's just about making English a regular part of your life.
Yeah, making it part of your daily routine.
Now, those are all more kind of passive forms of immersion.
Right.
What about things that you can do more actively?
Yeah, well, one of the easiest and most effective things you can do is change the language settings on your phone and other devices to English.
Oh, that's such a good idea.
Right.
It's a really small change.
Yeah.
But I can imagine it makes a big difference.
It really can. Suddenly you're seeing words like settings, messages, notifications, all in English all day long.
You have to use them
Exactly.
to navigate your phone.
You're actively engaging with the language. You're reinforcing that understanding.
It's like turning your phone into a language learning tool.
It is.
What about social media?
Social media can be a fantastic resource for learning English.
Yeah.
You know, follow English-speaking accounts that interest you, engage in conversations in English,
Uh-huh.
and even try posting in English yourself.
That's a great idea. It's a great way to connect with people
It is.
from all over the world.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap things up, I want to touch on one more thing.
Okay.
Reading.
Reading.
Which is, closely tied to thinking in English.
Absolutely. I mean, reading is essential for developing your vocabulary,
Yeah.
for improving your comprehension, and for getting a feel for the nuances of the language.
But it can be daunting.
It can be.
I feel sometimes when I'm trying to read a long article or a book in English,
Sure.
I'm like, oh my gosh, this is too much.
Well, the key is to choose material that's appropriate for your level.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to start with simpler texts.
So like graded readers.
Yeah, graded readers, children's books, news articles that are written for English language learners.
Okay.
That takes the pressure off.
It does.
And it allows you to focus on building your reading fluency and comprehension without feeling constantly frustrated.
Right, because when it's too hard, it's not fun.
Exactly.
And if it's not fun, you're not going to do it.
And remember, you don't have to understand every single word to get the main idea of the text.
Hey.
Focus on understanding those main ideas and try to guess the meaning of unfamiliar words from the context.
So it's okay to skim over some words.
It is.
If I don't think they're important.
Especially if they're not crucial to the overall meaning.
And as you read more, you'll naturally start to pick up that vocabulary.
You will.
And get more comfortable with the rhythm of English.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like you're training your brain to decode English more efficiently.
This has been so helpful.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
I'm really, feeling a lot more confident about, making that mental shift.
Yeah.
And starting to think in English.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, is there anything else that our listeners should keep in mind?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is that thinking in English is a process.
Okay.
It's not a destination.
So don't expect to be fluent overnight.
No. It's about making small, consistent efforts over time.
Yeah.
It's about being patient with yourself and enjoying the journey. It is. It's a journey.
Yeah.
And it's about finding what works best for you. Not every technique is going to resonate with everyone.
Right.
That's okay. Experiment, explore different approaches, see what clicks.
It's like putting together a puzzle.
It is.
You've got all these pieces and you're trying to figure out how do they fit together.
Exactly. And remember, there's no one right way to think in English.
Okay.
It's about finding a way that feels natural and authentic for you.
I think it's also important to remember that thinking in English isn't just about, improving your grammar or your vocabulary.
Right.
It's about connecting with different cultures.
Absolutely.
New ways of thinking,
Yeah.
new ways of experiencing the world.
It's a journey of self-discovery
Yeah.
as much as it is a language learning journey.
That's a great way to put it. So as we wrap up today, I want to leave you with a challenge.
Okay, I like it.
Now that we've looked at all this research,
Yeah.
all these different techniques,
Mhm.
what is one specific situation you're going to apply this to?
Yeah, what's that one thing you've been putting off?
Are you finally going to have that conversation with your English-speaking colleague?
Right.
Are you going to try to order your food at a restaurant in English
Yes.
without using a translation app?
Challenge yourself.
Are you going to watch your favorite movie in English
Yeah.
without subtitles?
See if you can follow along.
The possibilities are really endless.
They are. So, go out there, experiment, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Exactly. And remember, we're here to support you every step of the way.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
Until next time.
Happy learning.